Welcome to the Versus Show, everybody. With this long explosion intro, I didn't realize that explosion was that long. But it's going to be quite an interesting show. So, this week we're talking about socialism. Now, we got two different sides to the political spectrum here, and I guess we're going to have quite an interesting little conversation. So, Michael, you want to lead it off?
Hey, I'm Michael from Let's Talk News. I have a YouTube channel where I talk about news. And
surprising. I'm surprised by the title. I'm shocked.
You're talking about news?
It's actually that's not what it's not news at all. It's something completely else.
Yeah, I thought it was tennis.
He does it to throw people.
Damn it, you caught me. Anyways.
Oh, okay. Okay, Nathan, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I make a show about with my friend Jordan, and we talk about what gumboots are best to wear while playing video games. No, we just make Let's Plays. So Let's Plays and gaming videos and a podcast. So
and they're half Aussie and half Kiwi. So let's get on to Dylan.
My name is Dylan. I run a political YouTube channel called Dylan's Daily Show, which you can see below. And I advise you to go subscribe because I'm starting a new series very soon. It's going to be very interesting. So go check it out. I'm not going to give any more info because I'm Donald Trump this episode.
It's a tennis series. Right. It's a tennis series.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
It's going to be huge. And Mexico's going to pay for the series, by the way.
Nice reference there, Dylan. All right. So let's get right into it, people. So, socialism. It's quite an interesting thing. Now, there's things to be said for having more, socialist, I guess, policies, and then there's things to be said for not. And so, I guess we'll start off with, how do you want to take this, Michael? How should we start off with, like, individual topics, like maybe healthcare, et cetera, or do you want
What I think we're going to do is we're going to have each debatee open up with their opening statements and talk about the viability and the lack of viability of socialism in regards to poverty, welfare, or poverty, employment,
I guess government
and
things like that.
Okay.
Well, since I'm pro, I can definitely start that off, and then
all right,
sounds good. So, when I think socialism, I really think of equity and instead of equality, because those are two completely different things. Whereas equity is, bringing everyone up to the same kind of standard, whereas equality is more based upon a different thing, where it's like, in a way, if someone worked harder, they should get paid more because they worked harder. That's like a really, really, really simple kind of awful explanation of what it. But when I think about socialism in regards to policy, I think that the ideal would be that everyone gets equal footing in this political system, or at least gets the chance to have equal footing. And everyone has the ability to be brought together in such a way as that, everyone's treated what I would say fairly, but some of the people might disagree.
Well, here's my thing with socialism, is I don't have a problem with socialism in smaller, tight-knit communities. Is my internet okay?
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, just make it, because I'm seeing myself like 20 minutes after. Anyway.
It's just Skype.
All right. So socialism's fine, but there's a big difference between socialism and capitalism. And I know one of the presidential candidates said this. Socialism wants you to capitalism wants you to be equal at the starting line, and socialism wants you to be equal at the finish line. And I think that trying to force everybody to be equal at the finish line negates hard work, because if no matter what I do, I'm going to be equal with everybody else at the finish line, I'm going to get the money that, if I get whatever I want. And here's the biggest thing about it. In a community the size of America, socialism cannot happen. It can't happen because there are way too many people in this country to give everybody free college and to give everybody this and this and that, because nothing's free. Everything is paid for by the top 1%. And ironically, the top 1% are not tied to this country. They're multinational corporations now. And if they start to get taxed too high, they're like, it's ridiculous, they'll just move. And when they move, then who becomes the top 1%? The middle class. So it becomes a problem with there's not enough money to fund all of these programs that, I guess in this case, Bernie Sanders is saying that he wants to have. That's my biggest issue, because the population's too large.
Now, as a moderator, I'm going to back up on something you said before. You talked about how socialism was about equality of outcomes. Nathan, what would you say on the about equality of outcomes in terms of a socialistic policy, would you argue that's more communistic? Would you say that that is exactly what you're trying for? And what is the viability of that?
Oh, do you want to reply first?
I just wanted to say
before I
one
start?
thing. You go ahead. Go ahead. I'll say it.
Okay, so people often think that communism is like the mechanized and actionized form of socialism. And I can see why that's like a commonly kind of assumed thing. And communism is an idea that I agree with in some respects, but again has never worked and I don't think can ever work. Different reasons, blah blah blah. Anyway, my response to what you're talking about, like being equal at the finish line, it is difficult to say. I know I'm so embarrassed now because it's like as soon as we get recording, I'm like stumble over words not working in mouth, tongue too big for mouth. Sorry, what was the question? I've forgotten. I've like talked over myself now.
That's okay.
So just in reply to that whole idea of like how does it differ to communism, and then it's it's difficult to say. It is difficult to say because I can't think of a way to explain how it differs in regards to like government, because there's never been a truly socialist government in like America or New Zealand and like Western type countries in modern day. So it's hard to say how it truly differs for me.
Here's what I say, because do you know who Vladimir Lenin is? Or is that his name?
Yes,
Is it?
yeah.
Okay. He said, quoted from him, he's a famous communist.
Yeah.
He said the goal of socialism is communism. So to say there's a difference between the two, I don't think is viable, because you have one of the most famous communist people, like people look up to this man as a communist icon, and he says the goal of socialism is communism. It's sort of like the slippery slope on the way. It's like if you're going on a road trip and you take a pit stop, that's socialism. So if it's capitalism and you're driving to communism, you stop to go pee in the middle, that's socialism. And that's and it is pretty much the same thing in the sense that, it has the same theory of, well, the rich people, they're not, it's not fair because the rich people, they work too hard and they have too much money, regardless of how they made it. They could have worked their ass off to get there. But the guy who made horrible life choices and got addicted to heroin, it's not fair that he isn't making as much money as a rich person. So we need to redistribute some of this wealth. We need to give him government handouts, which we can't afford, but we need to do it anyway. And that's the problem I have with it, because we're $19 trillion in debt, arguably because of the socialist mix that we've put into our capitalist society in America. And it's not taking us in the right direction at all. I think we need to reverse and go the other direction.
But then when you talk about like the debt that the socialist policies have put us in, if you look at the presidential and you talked about the current like debt they have, if you look at any debts going back, every time there was a Republican president, it stayed in that negative, and then it got worse with Bush, obviously. But when you talk about, I'm not saying Republicans can't have socialist policies. Of course, there are elements of socialist policies and lots of policies, regardless of which you align with, Democrat or Republican. I don't think necessarily that it's that blaming a lot of the presidential, not the presidential, but the country's debt on socialism is necessarily the right thing. Because I think also wars and stuff like that. So it's not a complete reply to what you've said. It's not like the complete counter, but just a quick note.
Well, I know that Obama, who has advocated for a ton of socialist policies, has racked up more debt in his presidency than all the past presidents combined. So, did you get that?
Yeah, no, I don't.
Sorry, I don't know if I'm lagging. I keep seeing myself here.
You're good.
Turn off your camera, Christian. Just turn off your camera, because I see myself freeze, and then I'm like worried about and then I'm like, I just made a great point. Like,
If he turned off his camera, then it wouldn't work.
Don't worry, you're good. Trust me.
Okay. No, you get used to it.
If you go laggy, we'll tell you. But you haven't.
Just stare at all of our videos on the bottom.
I'm just gonna, that's what I've been trying to do, is like this. But anyway, so yeah, I just think that like welfare. Let's look at welfare, for example. It's arguably a socialist idea. It doesn't work. You can't say, okay, well, hey, this person isn't. Now, I understand in the sense of, and I don't want to say I'm advocating against all welfare, which ideally I would like no welfare at all. I wish that we would just get rid of the welfare state, because then we could have open borders, blah, blah, blah. But I know that realistically that isn't going to happen. So I think that, giving out welfare to people who aren't looking for jobs, who are addicted to drugs, who are doing all this awful stuff, that's when it becomes a problem. I understand welfare for the single mother who loses her job, and can't find work for a couple months and needs some money to tide her over. But I don't understand welfare for the fat person who is eating Doritos in their mom's basement. Like, that's the fine line for me.
I think it's interesting with that point, because I think that to blame individuals on some of these things, like this person is a drug addict and then they don't deserve to be helped. Is that almost what you're saying by getting rid of welfare? Is that like, because they're a drug addict, it is 100% their fault and they don't deserve any type of government help to stop being a drug addict, so then they can then become a participating member of society? You think they should just rot and die and then...
Who, poor people?
Well, no, not necessarily poor people, but you said like drug addicts doing these horrible things.
Well, drug addicts, okay, well, the drug war is what's failed the drug addicts. It has nothing to do with... I mean, these drug addicts, it's because we throw them in prison, which, again, is awful because we're spending more tax dollars. Like, honestly, at this point, I kind of just want to, you know... Most of the poor people are illegal immigrants, right? They come into this country. Why don't we just send them back? Like, let's send these scum back to their country that they came from. They don't belong here. And we're using our welfare money to pay for these idiots, these socialist morons who come into this country because Obama wants to ship them over here in buses because he wants us to be a socialist country, a socialist Islamic country. So he ships them over here in bus loads. And by the way, he doesn't bring any Christians in. Have you noticed that? Christians are getting beheaded. He's, oh, forget the Christians. I don't give a crap about the Christians.
Yeah,
he brings all them in.
Yeah,
he didn't get
they
brought
wouldn't
in.
let
Christian
me.
was left out. He was stuck at the border.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Anyway,
no, continue.
sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't hear what you guys said. So he didn't bring any Christians, but so he brings in all these socialists, and they're not doing anything. Like, I understand there's some people who come here illegally to work, but the majority of these people, he wants to expand the liberal agenda in this country, and to do that, you need more people dependent on the government. That's just because if there were no people dependent on the government, he'd still be smoking weed in Kenya. So.
But like, so then you're saying that the government doesn't have any type of responsibility to help others, though they have the ability to.
I think the free market has the responsibility to help others. I don't think the
But the
government.
free
should
market
do it.
doesn't help everyone, because.
But the free market can help everyone. The government is what causes the free market not to help everyone.
But then you've just blamed the government for like So, do you stand by what you just said by saying that these people are scum and they should be sent back to their countries and we shouldn't look after them at all?
Illegal aliens, yes. I think that people who come here illegally and break our laws are scum and should be sent back to their countries, yes.
But then so much of like, I don't want to get, because I know that I live in a completely different situation to how you guys live in America, but with like our immigration and such like that to me sounds like such an abrasive stance to view people. And I don't know if that's like the socialist within me coming out, but like to view people as scum because they've had to escape a situation where they may feel their lives are threatened, or they may feel as if they're they live in such a poor life, like kind of life area that, not life area, that's not even a,
Well, I think
just said
there.
life area, but yeah, sorry.
I'm not referring to them as scum. I'm saying what they're doing is reflective of a scum, right? They're not scum themselves. They're coming here for a better life, I understand, but they're using us. They're using our welcoming, they don't understand that we're $19 trillion in debt. They're like, oh, just waltz on into this country. They're going to be stupid and let me in, because they know they can walk in and we have no idea. So they walk in here and they're acting like scum in the sense that they're leeching off of people that actually work hard for a living. And they sit there and they're like, oh, I wake up and mow one lawn today and then go back and that's it. And, it doesn't help us at all.
I think there is probably some middle ground between what you guys are saying, because there's that middle ground where it's like, we could easily say that there could be a much easier process in which to enter the States legally. I mean, I think that the process that we have right now, most people would agree is, pretty difficult. I mean, look how long it takes to become a U.S. citizen and all the things, all the hoops you have to jump through and whatnot.
That's why you have to fix the legal immigration system. We have to fix that legal, yeah.
Right, but I feel like that is kind of the middle ground to, in other words, you still being able to bring people in, and then them being in the system and whatnot, but still being able to get out of, wherever they are or whatever the case may be. But.
Mm-hmm. So, backtracking a little bit on the topic, back to socialism, moreover. How would have a socialistic president or socialistic policies helped the U.S. economy during the housing bubble burst? In any way, shape, or form, would that have dampened the recession to follow? Could policies beforehand have stopped this from happening? What about in regards to that?
So we're talking about the 2008, 2009 type housing bubble thing? Okay.
Yeah, the Bill Clinton issue. Yeah.
So to my knowledge is that I don't know a whole lot about that specific bubble crash, because we had a lot different, because of course your recession, well, any American recession affects the whole world, because that's just how globalization works. Right. So it affected where I am in a different way. But so some people have said that the way that the capitalistic market works is that that's what led to the whole movie The Big Short is kind of about how capitalism can corrupt. It's kind of that whole movie is around the whole centered idea that through these big bankers, these evil people in black suits upstairs and this giant room came and corrupted the whole housing market, and this is what they told these poor people losing houses. I think a socialist policy, or at least socialist-leaning policy, probably could have led to places like Detroit specifically having housing that was not necessarily provided and paid by the government completely, but I think helping cushion the blow for a lot of these people that had their whole livelihoods taken away from them by going like, hey, if you live in this bracket, this income bracket, and you've lost this much in your housing thing, the government can provide you with either a grant or
but here's my question is, if you're going to provide them with that, doesn't that money come from other people? Like,
it does,
for the government to give people money, they have to take money from other people who work hard. So, like, where is all this money going to come from? I mean, there's a lot of poor people, like you were saying.
But then there's only a few rich people comparatively to the amount of poor people. And these people have such a high disposable income that they don't need, like, I understand when it's like, hey, look, we make this much money, but then it also costs this much for us to live because we have to pay for our houses and such like that. But the disparity in terms of like proportional disparity of the disposable income of these people, it's completely ridiculous to me. And
that they have a lot of money. So you don't think that people should be able to work and make money?
No, but there's a difference, because there's a difference between working and making like a living, like making money, and then making the amount of money that these people do.
But
in, like,
why do you want to make a ceiling to where people can't cross? Like, how come, like, if I create a business and I'm selling products and everyone's happy with my product, and then I hit this ceiling and then all of a sudden I'm an evil person? Like, because I could be the best person in the world and then I pass and start making a certain amount of money and then everyone wants to kill me. Like, I don't understand that at all.
Because we as humans have responsibility to help other people. That's my opinion.
See, for me, and I know this for a lot of other people, I want to strive as high as I possibly can in life. Like, I want to make the most out of this life that I can. I want to do everything I want in life. I don't want to spend my entire life working for other people. That's not how I want to run my life. Now, I understand that's maybe how Buddy said this once in his life, but that's not how I want to run my life. I want to make as much money as I can. I want to help. And by the way, you are helping people, right? If I make, Apple has helped billions of people around the world, hundreds of millions, maybe not billions, but a lot of people. They're an evil corporation, but they still make phones and stuff that they sell and other people use, and it's helped connect the entire world. And same with Microsoft and all these things. They've helped people in the long run. So I mean, you're looking at the aspect. Yes, I can see where you're coming from, where they're making all this money, and you feel like they should divide it up. But at the same time, they are helping them in a sense, because they're creating
products. Are you
products.
saying like helping them from not just products, but you think like creating jobs and things like that as well?
Well, yeah, like creating jobs. The bigger my business is, the more money I make. And let's say let's say it's completely free market, and I make a ton of money. I have money to open new locations, hire more people, and I can open, that's how they turned Harlem around. Harlem used to be a garbage can, and they said, okay, you know what, we're turning this around. We're going to start investing in the free market, and businesses started going in there, opening up. People got jobs, and it started booming again. And so I think that's the way you need to look at it. Like, well, you don't live in the United States, but do you guys ever watch Fox News?
I try not to.
Right.
Well, on Fox News, they have this commercial for upstate New York, and what they're talking about is upstate New York. 10 years of tax cuts and all this stuff. They offer all these very nice values, and like tax cuts, all this stuff for starting businesses. And since they've done that, their businesses have skyrocketed. People have been starting business. I think it's up like 65% or something like that, according to like CNN, and it's ridiculous. And that's all because they've said, you know what, we're going to get the government out of this, and we're going to let you open your small businesses, and it works.
Okay, so as well as that, just speaking about this, the issue of people like creating jobs and things like that is, I think when we talk about this whole socialism versus capitalism debate, you need to acknowledge the legacy, and this is straight away going to link into racism and things like that. Not saying that capitalism is necessarily racist, but to acknowledge the idea of capitalism and the people that are rich today. You have to go back to the legacy, like these people that have inherited money, like these people that have been rich and stayed rich. And I'm not ignoring the fact that there are those grassroots people that have started from nothing. But you look at the African American people in America have had much less time to even begin having those opportunities to start getting these huge businesses and making all this money. And I do think you kind of have to accept the idea of racism and capitalism together. And that when you look at the income disparity of the amount of minority people in America who are in poverty, and you look at these people that are suffering.
But they're in poverty because of liberal policies.
But then they're also, it's like, I'm trying to think of a good analogy to use to express how I feel, and I'm finding it really hard. Do you know, like with the Oscars thing, everyone was saying that like, oh, the Oscars, it's so racist, blah blah blah.
Yeah, it was a week
then-
after the Black Entertainment Television Awards. They have the Oscars, you know.
But then it's like you go to the whole thing where it's like there are less black people winning awards because there are less black roles.
They just had
being
their own
recorded.
award ceremony. They have their own station, Black Entertainment Television. Can you imagine if there was white entertainment television? Like, okay, I want to ask this question. Let's say you're a black person and you're born into an underprivileged community, with your black family and everything, and there's nothing wrong. I don't want to say I don't like the feeling of like saying races. I feel like it, you know. But anyway, for the point. So let's say that you're growing up and all you hear is, well, you're black, so you don't have a chance in life. You might as well not even try. The evil white people and the evil capitalist societies, they're just going to hold you back. You don't even have enough time to do anything. It's learned helplessness in these societies. They believe that because they're told from Reverend Al Sharpton, from Obama, from everybody that, oh, well, you know, it's just you can never amount to anything because of capitalism. So until we introduce socialism, you're never going to be able to get anywhere. And so they really have no motivation to do anything. Whereas look at Ben Carson, who's, I don't know if you know who that is. He's running for president.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
He started off. His mom had a third grade education, dirt poor, like, you know, she could hardly afford shoes. And he read books. He did all this stuff. He ended up being the pediatric neurosurgeon, the best in the country, the first to separate Siamese twins. I think the only separate Siamese twins at the head. And now he's running for president. You know, so it's like, I think there's a huge difference between people who take the bait, I guess you could say, when people tell them that they can't amount to anything because of capitalism, and then people who say, you know, screw it, I'm gonna be the best I can be. I don't care what may be holding me back or what other people say is holding me back because I can do whatever I want.
Now, we are still a little off topic, but don't you think you're creating a bit of a false dichotomy there, where you're saying there are people who do believe in capitalism and do try, but inevitably do not amount to anything? Are you saying
there are people
who deserve help?
Here's my thing is, what are you talking? Okay, my thing that I'm saying is that there's a whole system that I could, if I were to lay out the entire, let's say we were to go to the complete free market, if I were to lay out the entire, how I think it would affect the middle cities, or the inner cities, sorry, how I think people would be able to create jobs, make more money, and then use that money to invest in their thing or invest in education, stuff like that. I mean, it'd take forever, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. I feel like when you completely get government out and just let the free market do its thing, I think you have a much better chance than, you know, if I'm just to give you money, then you're less likely to do that, be positive with that money than if you have to work for your money, which I think that, you know, I think that people do when they have a job and they're blessed to have that job, because a lot of people that do get jobs in these inner cities feel really blessed to have their jobs. There's this stereotype that, you know, they're awful people, which they're not. They're just wanting jobs like everybody else.
Taking things back to socialism a bit, arguably, especially early 1900s, you could easily say that it was very much so a free market, and we had monopolies dominating kind of a lot of the markets, and people were suffering because of it.
There needs to be some
quality of life standards were much lower until, you know, the government started trying to break up these monopolies that formed because of a pure free market, and also, you know, quality of life began to rise. What are your thoughts, Nathan, on how socialism can improve quality of life and help the inevitability of what some people believe is the inevitability of a monopoly in a kind of pure free market capitalistic government?
Well, to me is that even in, this is going to sound irrelevant, but I'll link it back. Even in communism, the issue is that there are a few people that always abuse it and then make it not what the original idea was. Like in communism, the issue was that it was this whole idea of equality and equity and everyone gets the same, but then there's always people that have to control and regulate it. So the issue is that it automatically starts corrupting itself, and the idea is then watered down, and then it just kind of dissipates into something that it never originally was. And I think that socialism in today's society and back then, to me it feels like when you talk
I was sorry.
Oh, good. Train of thought.
Sounded like a train too, so it's funny.
Yeah. The train of thought wrecked my. I finally had like air in my head and away I was going. I had the tracks going, and then all of a sudden,
just derail.
Yeah, I just got completely derailed. When Bernie Sanders talks about, the top 1%, they need to make sure that these people are paying. It's that the quality of life of these people that are suffering would be dramatically increased by any like $1,000 to someone who makes $20,000 a lot of money. $1,000 from someone who makes $1 million a year isn't a lot of money for them.
Well, it can be.
It's the same.
Though.
It
can be though. Because what if I own a bunch of stores just because I make that $1 million? Like I may have other like overhead payments that I have to pay. Like I have to pay. Like I have my entire these people that the top 1%, all the money they make is typically budgeted out in a certain way. Like they say, okay, well this much of this money is going to this store. This much of this money is this store. And so when you start to say, well, that $1,000 doesn't mean anything. Well, that might mean a job for somebody else because if you start taking that extra $1,000, they may have to cut. May have to cut funding to one of their stores or cut funding to this section of their business. In which case, they'd have to fire people. People could lose their jobs.
But do you admit that there are people in America that are making gross amounts of money that they'll never ever spend, and it's not related to that $1,000 that'll go to like some store in the middle of nowhere? It could just be these people that have made this money that'll never ever get distributed down in this little trickle down idea.
Yeah, but I'm going to put this out there: the fact that for the most part. Not necessarily, but a lot of business owners are legally, or for tax reasons, separated from their business entity.
Well, see, I don't have. Wait, I don't know if were you directing that at me or him?
Kind of just putting this out there.
Oh,
It's
can you
more
say it again?
directed
I thought
towards
you were
him.
directing it at him. I didn't
No,
listen.
it's more
Can you say it again?
directed at you. The fact that the money is going to this business owner, but that can be very much so a different taxable entity than the actual business he's running.
Well, it can be in the sense that it depends. It depends because sometimes they use that money that they make for their business. I mean, they're recycling it, sort of, if you could say. But
there's definitely a lot of loopholes as well. But I mean, I think
well, there are
that's a
taxes. I
whole
feel like that
different
should be
issue.
closed, and I feel like we should have a flat tax.
Yeah,
personally.
well, for sure, these loopholes are. I mean, really, all it does is, for one, it only makes things more complicated. I think most people would agree on that.
Yeah.
And two, it keeps people who typically are, richer, able to abuse the system and really, in a way. I mean, again, I have no problem with somebody being rich, but I mean, I think it's got to be
like hedge fund people who don't pay any taxes.
Right,
That needs to change.
Right.
Which I do like a flat tax, right? Because you get rid of the loopholes and everybody pays the same percentage. It's fair. Nobody pays.
What do you think of that value-added tax? Have you heard of that one?
No, what are you talking about?
I actually may be botching this. I don't think it's called a value-added tax. It's the I forgot. It's the tax basically where they say that what you put in, like how it's a tax on consumption. I know, like I've heard it called like the value.
So it's almost like a proportional tax type
Right.
thing.
It's basically as much as you use is what you're taxed on. So, I mean, theoretically speaking, you buy more things, you put more money into the system, you're taxed on all those things, opposed to getting taxed yourself. It's tax on consumption,
So you're punished more for how much you spend.
basically.
Okay, so I think that idea to me that sounds like a socialist idea to begin with, in terms of that these people that have the ability to spend more should be paying more, because it's like to do with disposable income. And I just want to know what you think, Dylan, on this. The issue, the main Bernie Sanders issue that he's talked about economically is that the top 1% should be taxed more just officially, just because they can afford it. And what would you say is your main issue with that? Like, if you could summarize it in like a sentence, your main issue with the idea of the top 1% having to be taxed more.
Why do you have to punish people who make more money? That's my question.
So why do you say being taxed is being punished, though?
Because it is being punished. It's absolutely being punished. Like, what's the motivation to work hard? If you work hard, you start making a certain amount of money, and then government's like, oh well, you're evil now. So, like I said, you cross that line, and then all of a sudden you're evil. So what's the motivation for somebody to continue to work as hard as they can if they're just gonna get to that certain point and then be evil, and the government's gonna take their money? Like, that's not fair, and I don't think we should be punishing people for that. In fact, I think it keeps people down.
So, do you think that that system would dissuade people from achieving highly because they would feel as if through achieving highly that they're almost being punished for doing so?
Yeah, I do. And I think a lot of the rich people who are going to get taxed are just going to leave the country. I think the people in the top 1% are just going to move to whatever country, Switzerland, and because they don't need to be here. They're still going to be just as rich in Switzerland as they are in the United States. They don't need to leave, or I mean, sorry, they don't need to stay. So they're just going to leave if Bernie Sanders is like, "Oh, I'll take 90%." You know, they're going to be like, "Screw you, old man, I'm leaving."
I think we need a Bernie Sanders impression counter at this point.
I know.
That's what I was about to say. Like, how many times we said top 1%?
Why don't we just get Bernie
support
Sanders on the show?
Yeah.
Okay, I wish.
Next time,
That'd
bring
be
a
hilarious.
counter.
Yeah. I mean,
All
I
right.
know that because. Oh, sorry. No, you go.
Oh,
Christian.
go for it. Go for it.
Just quickly about that idea, and I know it's seen as punishment, but for me, where I am, because we're having the exact same debate right now, is that people have always debated in New Zealand as well as America, pretty much anywhere there's taxes. Should these people get taxed more so that arguably it's better for everyone else? That's like the common saying, is that should this 1% get taxed more so it's better for the rest of the 99%? That I'm not saying I'm pushing that idea, but that's like a commonly thought idea, is that by going against this one that owns all this much, the millions that own this much will somehow profit. And when you talk about the fact that it's dissuading people from trying to achieve highly, I really don't know if that's true, because do you think people only achieve highly nowadays because they think that they can make a lot of money from it? I'm not saying that's wrong, but do you think really that tax thing would make people go, what's the point in even trying here? I'll move overseas.
What I think is that, I mean, if you look at the socialist countries around the world, if you look at Greece, which is the best example right now, if you look at European countries, if you look at other things, they're in the tanker. They've destroyed themselves from within because of these policies. Now, I understand that you want to help all these people. You think that you have some social obligation to help people, but it's not true. And you can't help everybody. Like, there's no such thing as a superhero. Superman can help everybody in his comic book, but we can't help people in real life. Like, we can't help everybody. You can try to help as many people as possible, but I think that when some other person dictates how you help people, that's when it starts to become a problem. Because when you start to say, well, since you're not doing a good enough job, in my opinion, of helping people, so I'm going to start just taking your money and doing it for you. I think at that point is when it becomes stupid, and I think that you're not as willing to spend, like, let's say I could create as many jobs as I want, but now since the government's taking my money, I'm like, well, screw it, I'm not even gonna, because then I have to pay more taxes, and I don't want to do that. Like,
Nathan, I know you're a bit of the psychologist here. Wouldn't you say, at least from your perspective, that humans are inherently selfish? And
well, because then you're like altruism theory, which is like the belief that do we actually do things for the inherent sense of like worth that we feel from helping other people, or are humans naturally selfish? But to me, is that we're social animals, is that we have only survived so long, well, people believe, because we have the ability to communicate and we have the ability to, all work together and type things like that. I don't necessarily believe that we have an inherent want to help other people necessarily, but I think that it might not be human nature, but I do think that we all agree that we should be trying to boost each other up as much as we can, so we're all happy. There's no negative thing of us all being happy, right? There's no negative to everyone just getting along and everyone having a good life.
Hence the NewTubers.
But yeah, that's the NewTubers. We're all happy.
Sorry,
we all
the
get along,
plug.
we'll have a good life.
Sorry.
And from a psychological perspective, I agree that like altruism might not come naturally to everyone, but I think that feeling good from helping people does come naturally to everyone, because there is that evolutionary benefit. I'm just completely talking over myself and falling over my words, and it's kind of
I get what
fantastic.
you're
No,
saying.
it's good.
Like, I understand what you're saying. But everybody wants to help people. Are you trying to end the show? I don't know if you're trying to end the show.
Well, okay, continue what you're saying, but I just want to put this out there as the fun, because we're gonna wrap up the show here. But I want to end on one thing. Go ahead, finish what you're saying, but then after that, I'm going to pose the question.
I totally lost my train of thought now, so.
All right.
The
Perfect.
train came back. It came back for you this
The
time.
train hits you. The train hits you. All right. So we'll kind of end it on this. Nathan, I want you to talk about healthcare and where exactly, what you think that should be. And then the second question is really, or I guess thing would just be to kind of put your final arguments together on why you think socialism is the better way to go. And then
we'll hand it over to Dylan as well.
Yeah, and
okay.
Dylan will finish off with this rebuttal.
In New Zealand, our healthcare system is ACC, wherein if you have any accident happen to you, and if you have anything like some sort of medical emergency, the government pays for it. And this is how it's been in my entire life. So this is the only system I know where the public system works pretty efficiently. However, if you want the premium care that works really quickly, you got to go and pay. But to my knowledge is that for most people, if ACC, which is what it's called in New Zealand, didn't exist, you would have so many more people just sick and such like that. And I don't know if you'd necessarily call it a socialist policy. You could agree that it is. But when I hear people talking about Obamacare and it being this awful, awful thing, and then I see the similarities to our system that works really, really effectively in our albeit small country, I don't see why everyone just sees it this outrageous thing. Because obviously what he's saying is like, hey, I'm trying to make it easier for you people who might be suffering to get help and not have to suffer more because you need help. Because that's what it feels like when I see some of the American system at times. It's like, hey, sorry, you have cancer. Go die slowly.
Well, that's what in Canada, my friend's parents, grandparents, I'm sorry, they both lived in Canada, and they have a similar system, the single payer, and they both died of heart attacks because they couldn't get in to get their hearts. They couldn't get in to have surgery. Both of them. Neither of them could get in because there was long lists. So they were trying to get into the United States to do it because our system works. So they were trying to get in here, and go ahead. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to throw it in there.
Oh, no. So I know that it's kind of difficult because I come from the perspective that I live in a country that has like 4.2 million people. And that's a completely different animal to how it's working in America. But I don't see why, with your greater resources and all these people working together, that they couldn't get a similar system to work in such a way that benefits everyone. More people.
And because premium, like my family's premiums went up like $6,000 since Obamacare's kicked in. It's ridiculous. Like my mom has had to go out and start doing other stuff. Like, I'm not obviously living on my own yet. I'm only 20, but so I don't have to deal with it yet but I know she has had to struggle they have had to struggle to I mean, they have plenty of money, but they have to struggle to kind of like decide at what, all the stuff. So I totally lost my train of thought again.
It's okay. So and
that train
we'll
just keeps going back and around.
Choo-choo.
Well, I guess we'll kind of go to final arguments.
Yeah.
So
what was the second? Do you want to incorporate the second question into the closing argument, or just go?
The second question was the closing argument.
Was that your closing argument?
No worries. My closing argument is just this whole thing is that I think socialism is an ideal, and it's an ideal that I think we should all strive for. However, I can acknowledge you can't be so naive as to think that it can work in the next 4 years or 8 years, even if Bernie Sanders became president. You wouldn't be able to instate every single socialist idea that he wants. It's unrealistic. But I think what is realistic is that we can slowly walk towards achieving these ideas that place all of us in such a way as that we can all benefit and we can all make money and we can all live happy lives. I sound like a complete hippie right now. But I do admit that Bernie Sanders, I love his ideas, and I think that he has many more revolutionary ideas that benefit more people, not just one specific group of people. But I don't know if you can actually get them working in the current American political system.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. No, I ended there anyway. So my thing is like socialism. It's great, but will it work? I don't know.
My thing is I feel like socialism is an emotional way of looking at things. It's a more emotional way. Like you want to, the poor guy, like let's help him. Let's help him. The poor person, let's help him. Like it's more of like it's like you see a homeless person and you think, oh, poor guy. Well, let's just take money from the rich person to give it to him. But I don't think it's a logical position because you don't look very deeply into the issues. That's why you see a lot of younger people that are socialists rather than older people. People are like, because they don't understand what free means. They're like, oh, free college. Yeah, I want to go to free college, but they don't understand that'll just
paying for it.
Well, even that, but it'll dilute the quality and the meaning of a college degree, like a high school. It'll be like a high school diploma, because if everybody's getting a college degree, then the businesses aren't going to care about it anymore, because right now it means that it has value in the sense that, not many people have them. Well, a lot of people have, but like there's a lot of people who don't go. And so the people who do go, it means they're either very intelligent or very wealthy. And if you get in, you're very wealthy or very intelligent, let's hire you. But if everybody's going to college, then it's no longer this dumbass got in for free because Bernie Sanders. But I think it's more of an emotional stand. And I get what you're talking about. I've understood what you're talking about this entire time. Like I do want to help.
Because I fumbled over myself completely. So
well, I do want to help the person on the street. I do want to help make sure that everybody gets medical care. But at the same time, I want to do it in a way that isn't going to take the entire country down with it. Because I want to make both a logical and an emotional decision, and that's what I think about socialism and capitalism.
So it's almost like do you know the philosophical term, the deep disagreement? Whereas like if you disagree from an ideological standpoint from the get-go, there's no point in arguing any further.
Mm-hmm.
So socialism, do you think, almost leans towards that? 'Cause if you have this ideological difference from the get-go that one believes that someone should help other people before putting themselves.
I think that socialism is the urge to help people quickly, and capitalism is the urge to help people over time. I think that capitalism wants to help people slowly, but get people going, and it's kind of like a train when a train starts. It starts very
Man,
slowly.
all these
but
trains
Yeah, I know,
this
I was gonna say.
episode.
a train starts, but it starts to. Well, I just started thinking of it but it starts picking up momentum and going faster
Right.
and faster and faster and faster. Whereas socialism, they're trying to get the train going really quickly. Like, oh, let's go. And then I just knocked my headphones out. I look like a spaz. But but that's what they're trying to do. So I see it as more of like a slow train process. You gotta let it go, you know.
And right now we're still starting up, would you say? Is the train's just starting to get going?
I'd say we're still sitting on the tracks. Like we haven't even started moving yet because we're so divided in this country between both sides. I think that it's easy to get. That's what kind of appeals me to Trump is because Trump says I'm going to go in there and I'm going to compromise, and Ted Cruz is like, "You not compromise," and it's like, well, you know, like we have to compromise if we want to get anything done. Like you can't, yeah.
Well, I think that's a great way to end, especially with our trains. So we're going to go ahead and roll on out of here. And that was a very interesting and intellectual debate, I've got to say. Two interesting sides with very many interesting points. I was definitely intrigued the entire time. That's why I was over here just listening. I mean, it was great. So I think it was a fun old episode on socialism, and if you guys enjoyed, please give us a like, a comment, a subscribe.
Well, feel free to debate it down in the comments.
Yes,
about
please.
What your opinion is on the situation.
All you internet people don't know how to stay nice, so I already tell you now, go ahead. You're going to get nasty in the comments, so I'm not going to discourage it, but...
Throw some abortion
And
in
if
there.
you want to
Get
call
some-
me, if you want to call me a racist, homophobic, whatever, just go ahead over to my page, and I'm more than happy. I'm accepting of you guys.
So if you guys want to call me a hippie, I hate it when people subscribe to me and like my videos. I hate it. It drives me insane. So if you hate my viewpoint, just subscribe and then just comment and interact. Ugh, it's awful.
And if you hate any of us, please like, comment, and subscribe on this channel.
Yeah.
And
if you guys hate respectful debates like this video,
and exactly, then go ahead and give us a whole bunch of love. So that was a fun little episode, guys. Episode number 2, even though we're not really keeping track. Hope you enjoyed, and send us your ideas, thoughts, and who wants to be on the next episode. Send us your messages.
and if you want to hear more of the Bernie Sanders impression, go to Dylan's
absolutely. Maybe you should do a Bernie Sanders tutorial. How do you do the accent?
No, I support the guy, and that's fantastic. I don't care what anyone says. That's
And you can find all of these guys' channels in the links below. So, episode 2 versus... I'm going to end on an explosion. Boom.